Down here as far as people joining, so we'll go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Ken Allwine. I am the Associate Product Marketing Manager for Power Supplies, and I've been with the company for 26 years, and I've been gardening for maybe about 11 years. And that all stemmed from my wife and wanting to start to, grow food at home and just kind of save some money at the grocery store. Of course, that doesn't always equal saving money in your pocketbook because sometimes you do have to build some things, buy some materials, and so forth. But in the end, it's been a very rewarding journey for us to do this gardening process, learn about gardening and growing and harvesting and composting, and to be able to share this information that we've learned over the years is, I think, a great thing for anybody, really, as you learn, pass that information on, and it just helps everybody as a community. So what I'm going to share today is what I have learned over the past several years. I am by no means a gardening expert like Joe Gardner or Laura from Garden Answer, but I've learned a few things. I've stumbled a lot. We've killed a lot of plants, and so hopefully you can learn a few things from what we have learned over the years and what we've experienced. So I'd like to get started here with a quick video my wife actually put on Instagram last night that I thought had a really good audio clip about this whole idea of growing food. So hopefully you'll be able to hear the audio.
I don't think the world needs more large-scale farms. I think it needs more folks that they can grow food where they're at right at this very moment. In their back and front yards, in containers from balconies, urban rooftops, on small garden plots, and homesteads.
So hopefully you heard that. If not, wave your hand or whatever. But that's the only video I have in the presentation. That video was actually, she made that last night. Those were asparagus stems that she harvested yesterday from our garden, and we smoked them on the grill, and they were just perfect. Nothing better than veggies that came out of your garden that day. And the picture on the right there, those are carrots from last season. All right, so what are we here to talk about today? It's really around this idea of small gardening, raised beds, container gardening, and taking care of them. So that's what we're going to get into here today. No, that is not my business. If anybody lives down towards the Lancaster area, you may know Ken's Gardens. That's down towards the New Holland area. Great little place to get a lot of supplies, plants, trees, all that kind of thing. And right across the street is one of our best resources, which is Roar Seeds. We just bought a whole bunch of wildflower seeds from them. They have, I don't know how many strains of corn, but they have basically everything you could possibly want, from flowers to vegetables, grass, all kinds of different things. So great resource for you there. So we're going to talk about containers and we're going to talk about raised beds. They're small options that you can do, whether you have a large amount of space or a small amount of space, or however you want to design it into your living process. How do you live? How do you take care of? How much space do you have? Now, we are lucky that we have a little bit over an acre of land, so we're able to do some permanent beds, but that's not the only option that's out there. We decided not to do in-ground beds just because our dirt isn't really that great. From the construction process of the house, all the topsoil is gone and it's all hard shale and clay. So we went upwards so that we had, better soil. The picture on the top there in the center, that's just a raised container garden that we have on our front porch. Last year we had chives in it and a couple other herbs. This year we're trying out some strawberries in there just to have some fun. And my youngest daughter has a little a fairy garden in it, so you can make it fun and whimsical when you're doing container gardens. The lower picture on the left there, that's our main garden. That's our raised bed garden. We have 10 4x8 beds, plus we have the 3 raised beds on the side there that are metal. We'll get into all that a little bit later, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the pictures on the right are just other ideas for different types of gardening structures. So if you had, like you can see there, that bed on the top right-hand side, that's more in ground. You can see off the side of a porch there, you can see some ground. If you look through the railing, you can see stuff on the ground. But that's a container that's hanging off the edge of the banister of a deck. So even if you live in an apartment and have like a little back veranda or patio or porch, you can still grow. You don't have to have a lot of land. You don't have to have any land. A lot of people will grow on roofs in other countries. Raised beds, again, on the bottom right-hand side, just another different design to make it look prettier. So let's talk a little bit about raised beds and then a little bit about container gardening. So a couple advantages and disadvantages of both of these. So with raised beds, some of the advantages are that one, it's a permanent structure, so you don't have to worry about moving things around. You don't have to worry about frost and freezing. You have a larger growing space. Generally, you're making 4x8 beds or an L-shaped bed or a U-shaped bed. And that's very good if you're doing multiple plants. So if you want to feed a whole family, or if you're trying to grow for a community or for like a food bank, you can grow more volume in a larger space. And of course, the taller you build it, the easier it is on your back. So ergonomics is a great thing for raised beds. The top right-hand picture, you can see we have 18-inch beds, and then we have a big 36-inch bed. So you can get them in different heights or build them however high you want them to suit your physical requirements. Some disadvantages. One, you really can't move these things. Once they're built, they're there. Otherwise, you're going to have to take out all that dirt, tear them down, and then reconstruct them somewhere else. Your choice of materials are very important. If you get raised beds like in the picture on the top right there that are metal, those kits, they're powder coated, they're very durable, very long lasting. If you start to build raised beds out of cedar, that's good for rot resistance. Pressure treated wood these days, it's a lot safer than it used to be. It doesn't have the same caustic chemicals in it that it used to years ago. However, I've learned from experience that when you do a raised bed and you're putting a large amount of soil in there and it's in there all the time, that it will rot faster than cedar or metal or what we have the black beds there. That is recycled thermoplastics, so like milk jugs and water bottles. So your choice of materials is expensive is important. It also has to do with your budget, how you want to allocate your budget, how many beds do you want to build. So there is a higher startup cost when it comes to when it comes to raised beds. So it's something to take into consideration. Now let's take a look at container gardening. So the advantages here is that you can have one plant and one container. So it's really, really easy to start into gardening just by having one plant. You don't have to have a big, massive bed. You don't have to have rows in your backyard. You can have one pot and one plant. And there's a reference there on the right-hand side of the different size pots that are available and the different types of crops that you can grow in them. So if you want to just do a herb bed, you could just have a couple pots with basil, cilantro, lettuce, spinach, thyme. One we really like to do is spring onions. So you have chives. So, and then start with one. You see how it goes. If you like it, you can continue to grow more things. And you can start to add more pots, make your garden array bigger. And you can put them just about anywhere. And the nice thing about this is, depending on the season, you can move your pots around to take advantage of the sun or the shade during the summer. And of course, that's a much lower cost startup there because you're just buying one pot, one plant, maybe a watering can, and that's about it. And then you can be on your way to start to experiment. Because really, gardening is a giant experiment. You're never going to do everything perfect. Some things will go great, some things won't go great. Last year we had a lot of problems with our tomatoes, but our peppers did great. The year before it was the other way around. So you never know how things are going to go. The picture in the top center and the picture at the bottom, if you know Mike Garrick, that's his experiment right now. So those six containers at the top there, he got all six of those with the lights and the seed trays and the a little drip tray underneath it for 15 bucks for the whole thing. So you can see it can be very inexpensive to get started. And then you can start simply by using 5-gallon buckets or planter boxes. So it's an easy way to get started and to experiment. Teresa, you're absolutely right. 6x6 cedar fence posts are a great way to do it. And in fact, there's a lot of videos on Instagram and TikTok that show making them out of cedar fence planks. I'm going to experiment with that a little bit myself with making potato beds out of them that you can stack together. A couple disadvantages: the more containers you have, the more maintenance and shuffling around you might have to do. You do have a limited amount of growing space per container, so that you have to take into consideration on what you want to grow. The bigger the crop, like potatoes or tomatoes, especially like watermelons or other melons or pumpkins, take up a massive amount of space once it starts to grow. They start vining and getting everywhere. Temperature fluctuations is something else you have to deal with. So throughout, not just throughout the day, but seasonally. So if you have something that's sitting in the shade during the day, it can get scorching hot in the middle of the day, and then really cool in the summer, and that might mess with the growth regulation of the plant. And also, because you're in a smaller container, you have to deal with nutrient management a little bit differently. You have to watch your pH of your soil, fertilize more often. Where with the bigger gardens, like a raised bed, everything becomes more neutralized because it's a larger area, and if there's worms and things like that in there, the nutrients move around the planter bed. So now that we understand what the two differences are for smaller gardens, we will talk about setting up your garden. Okay. So with raised beds, location is very important because you need to understand how much sun are you going to get during the day. Where we built our beds, and that's a picture of me building them back in 2021, I think. We have about 9 hours of sun in that particular spot throughout the day. So it hits full sun by 9 a.m. and the sun doesn't go away till about 7 or so. It's a blessing for us, but it's also going to be a very harsh curse, especially with the last few summers that we've had where the sun and the heat have been extremely intense. We've had scorching issues, but that's a whole another topic that we could talk about. The construction of it, if whether you're using 4x4s or landscaping timbers or fence posts or pickets or whatever you might be doing, you'll have to calculate out everything you would need, how you're going to fill it with soil preparation, whether you're depending on how tall it is. There's what's called hugelkultur, which is a European method of layering very woody products like stumps and branches, and then mulch, and then leaves, and then grass, and then the soil on top. So it helps break down all of that stuff over time, but also less soil to put in. Your plant selection, if you go tomatoes in one bed for one time, you want to rotate that to a different one that helps with like nitrogen fixing and things like that. So again, a whole nother topic when you talk about the science of fertilization and crop rotation and things like that. We're not going to get into that today. And then, of course, there's the watering aspect, which we'll get into in a bit. A container garden, there's not a whole lot to set up here. It's a matter of what type of containers you're going to use. So we used a kit for what's on our front porch. I don't know if we got that on Amazon or whatever. The picture at the bottom is one of our containers that's in our garden area. That's just an old whiskey barrel. And we were just at Lowe's this past weekend. Not only do they have the whiskey barrels, but they now have a big plastic liner that goes inside. Ours, it's just got dirt in it and it's always coming out. So there's great options that are out there. Location, again, has to do with sun exposure and weather exposure. If you're on a back porch, front porch, side porch, patio, whatever, understand where the sun is and where your shade is at so that you get the right amount of sun or the right amount of protection. Soil. So with containers, it's more like potting soil because it's a very confined space, very small space. So if anybody's into doing like indoor plants, you have, your potting soil for indoor plants, very similar type of potting soil that goes into larger pots like this or raised containers like this. is you want something that's not going to compact. You want something that maybe has some slow release fertilizer in it if you're not going to be fertilizing frequently. Something with like perlite or vermiculite in it to help with water retention. You just don't want it to compact down because if you put like regular topsoil or garden soil in a container, it will very quickly compact down and makes it very hard for the root structure of a plant to grow. And then, of course, watering, which we'll get into here in a little bit, which is right now. So water. Water is one of those things where you absolutely need it to grow anything, just like you need soil, like you need air, like you need sunshine. But water is one of those things it's inconsistent. So with irrigation, water is vital for anything. And this goes along with what Don Dickinson was presenting. If you've watched that video already, is we have to pay particular attention to water and how we use it. It's a critical resource that needs to be protected. It needs to be conserved and used wisely because we can very easily overwater our garden. So a couple of things to take into consideration when we're talking about irrigation and watering our gardens is understanding one, the water requirements, where the water is coming from. Is it city water, well water, rainwater? There's the climate change component that's happening, and there's droughts, and I'll get into that in a bit. Collection of rainwater, irrigation systems. So there's a couple different things to take a look at here. So with water requirements, when you look at the various plants that you can grow, from watermelons to potatoes to tomatoes to peppers to herbs, all those different things require different levels of water input. Melons and bigger fruits like tomatoes, they're much more thirstier than, say, basil or chives or cilantro. So when you purchase a plant or the seeds on the packet, it'll generally say, what type of water requirements it has, whether it needs a moist root structure or if you want to let it completely dry out before you water it again. So understanding that, and a good idea there is to group your different plants that need different water requirements. So if you have plants that require a lot of water, put that in this section. If it's less important for frequent watering, you can put them over on the other part. So you can group your pots together, or you can group the plants in different raised beds together. So with water sources, each of these sources has a different component that needs to be considered. First thing with city water, one, you're paying for it. Every gallon that comes out of there, you're paying for it, whether it's pennies or whatever. And depending on what municipality you're in or city you're in, there's going to be different components being put into that water, whether it's fluoride or chlorine or some other chemical that's being put into it. So that ultimately is being put on your plants as well. With well water, every well is going to be different. Some are high in iron, some are high in phosphorus, some are higher in other things, some are deficient in other things. So it's always good to get a water test done, just so you know what's coming in your water. And water tests are very inexpensive. And then, of course, there's rainwater, and that's where we're going to spend a little bit more of our time talking because I have a lot of background in experimentation in rainwater collection. But before we get into that, and this goes into water being a vital resource. I'm not going to make this a political conversation, but climate change is something that is happening. We see it every day. This is information that I got off of the Drought Monitor website yesterday, showing the level of drought that's currently in our country. So 56% of the U.S. is currently in a drought. And if you look at that lower right-hand picture, the red star is where Phoenix Contact is in Harrisburg, right? The 5 surrounding counties that most of us live in that work out of the Harrisburg office, we are already in a drought. We are either in a moderate drought or a severe drought already. So you can see the farther east we go, it's a more severe drought. So it's not something that they talk about on the news a lot, but I mean, you can see it right now. I think last I heard was we were somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 inches of deficit of water already for rain. So whether you're pulling from the city water, your well water, or you're collecting rainwater, it's a scarcity. The resource is something of scarcity, and it's something we have to take into consideration and use smartly. And that's why I like to use rainwater and collect as much as possible. This was a picture from last spring when I was doing some work out in the backyard, and one of those torrential rainfalls came through, and that's all water that you see close to that picture. And it's a lot of water that could have all been collected coming off my roof, but it was just kind of flowing through my backyard. The nice thing about rainwater is it's naturally soft water. So a lot of times the water that you're getting out of the ground or through the city is hard water, which means it's a very high level of mineral content, which may or may not be good for any particular plant. You have the optimal pH for plants. The nutrient content, when you look at whether it's runoff, just falling from the ground, or coming off your roof, it's picking up organic matter um, through its water cycle. And it's also cost effective. It's very inexpensive to capture water from coming from rain. One thing I get a lot of kickback on when I'm talking about rainwater collection on social media is people are saying that it's illegal. It is not illegal at all in any state in our country to collect rainwater. If you go to energy.gov, I have a link here at the bottom, and I can share this presentation if you like. There is a countrywide map that has all of our states there that you can see in that picture, that only two states where it's kind of limited in what you can collect. Nevada, it's limited to non-potable usage, and on I think it's Colorado, it's um, limited to like 100 gallons per person per a certain amount of time. But everywhere else, there's very little limitations. In Pennsylvania, we have no regulations here. In fact, it's encouraged. A lot of the municipalities in our area, in fact, will put on rain barrel days where you can go build your own rain barrel and bring it home. And then in some areas, like in California and other states, there are certain municipalities where you get tax advantages if you actually have rainwater collection. Rainwater capturing. So there's rain barrels, right? So just regular looking plastic barrels or the wooden barrels. You can do underground cisterns, which are generally concrete or plastic. IBC totes, which in the picture there, that's what I have. And you can even use trash cans, drill a hole in the lid of a trash can and have your downspout go right into that and use that water. It's just instead of running off into your grass or onto the street, you're capturing that to be used at a later time when you don't have the rain. Of course, me being me, I overdo everything that I do. So the pictures that you see there, that's four 330-gallon IBC totes. So I've got close to 1,200 gallons of water storage that are all piped together. And the downspout there, the box on the downspout, that's like a leaf filter, so it filters out all the gunk coming off the downspouts, and then it's diverted into the tanks versus going to other places. Hannah, you make a good point, and I'll bring that up in a little bit towards the end. So using rainwater, you can do it in different ways. The easiest thing, just use a water can. Have a little tap at the bottom of the trash can or your barrel that you fill up a water can, and you can, water your different pots or plants with that. You could have a little solar powered pump in a tank that just feeds a hose. You could feed sprinklers with it. I personally use drip irrigation so I can control things a little bit better. What you see there is I went out and I bought a industrial style cabinet off of Amazon, and I got a rainwater pump and lots of fittings and a beehive from Orbit, which is a little valve controller that controls different irrigation points. And I built that up last summer. That's what it looks like installed. Now, like I said, this is way overboard. You do not have to do something like this. You could just have a little hose timer that's battery operated that turns the valve on and off to water your landscaping. But that box up in the right-hand corner gets wired out to the different valves that you can see there on my beds, and each one is timed, and then each one is plumbed differently based upon what I'm watering. Like I said, some stuff needs more water, some stuff needs less water. So having each bed individually controlled gives us that ability to change the water consumption or water implementation for each bed. Um, so yeah, I completely overboard there. A couple other things you can do though with these smart controllers that are available now. I mean, you can get them at Home Depot, Menards, Amazon. Is they're not only is it set up timing, but they generally, if it's connected to your Wi-Fi network or wherever, it can pull in the data for weather and suspend watering if it knows it's going to rain. So it helps you save water. And then some of the systems you can add on fertilization injection. So you could have like a little tank that siphons off of it into the irrigation that instead of having to sprinkle fertilizer or put liquid fertilizer down, it just injected into the irrigation system. I haven't gone to that level yet. Now we get into maintenance. So we've set it up, we've planted, we're watering, and yes, right, yet. And now we're getting into the maintenance of our beds. So that is, what's going on with the beds, making sure everything's growing well. This is the exciting part, watching things happen. Um, and I love that little image there on the right-hand side. My wife and I are both guilty of it. As soon as we start planting stuff, we're out there, we're looking for sprouts or little starting to pop out of the dirt, looking for, getting that exciting growth happening. And that's just my wife there at the end of the season on our old tractor, cleaning up the garden. So depending on the size of your garden, you have little tasks that you can do all year round. So it's something that can help occupy your time and give you something to look at or anticipate doing year round. Starting all the way back in January, planting, and then you get into the planting of it, and then the pruning and the control of weeds and all of that. And then at the end, the composting side of things, which is a whole nother topic that we could talk about a whole nother time. But you can see from January all the way through December, there's a chart there just generally of what can be planted when. So you have spring crops, summer crops, fall crops, and winter crops. So you could almost be growing something year round depending on your climate, where you're at in the country, and what you want to grow. At the end of the year, we do a lot of our composting. Well, we compost all year round, but I just got some old pallets and built a couple bins that, I turn those over every week or two just to keep all the organic matter breaking down. And then we take that and put it back into the garden. And so it's a continuous process. It's a closed loop process where whatever we put in, we're getting out, and then it's going back into the system. And so instead of constantly going out and buying dirt, we're making our own. And then we have a couple fruit trees that we have on our side yard, and late fall, say November, and then again in March, we're spraying those with like copper fungicide, making sure that they're healthy for the spring season and when all the blooms come in and then the fruit come in. So there's something to do all the time. Then you get into the feeding, weeding, and the critters. This is the day in and day out stuff that, you know, sometimes for some people it's a stress relief thing. Sometimes it's frustrating because sometimes the weeds try to take over. And then of course, like if you live in our area, which is a little bit more rural, you have a lot of wildlife. We have the deer, we have rabbits, squirrels, the birds, all that stuff. So we get a lot of critter activity in our gardens. One easy way, that middle picture there, is take wire waste baskets from Amazon or Walmart or whatever and put it over top of your plants. That way, the rabbits and the squirrels can't get to them right away when they're small and um, frail plants before they start getting big. And then feeding is an important part of it. You don't just plant a plant and water it and walk away. You have to make sure that it's getting the nutrients that it needs. Now, the better soil that you have, with compost and things like that and granular fertilizer, you can go longer in between. But this was a good image that I saw. I think it was just at a Home Depot that it explained the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium numbers that are on um, fertilizers. So when you look at a container of fertilizer, whether it's liquid fertilizer or it's granular fertilizer, you'll see three numbers. You'll see three numbers with a dash in between. First one being nitrogen, second one being phosphorus, and the other one being potassium. And those are the three main items that you need to grow healthy plants. Teresa, how high is my fence? Um, it is 7.5 feet tall. I found online a resource, I think it's called critterfence.com or deerfence.com. We have a lot of whitetail in our neighborhood, and so we wanted to make sure they didn't get in. So 7.5 feet tall. I think they have an 8 foot tall option, but I thought 7.5 was good enough. But it's nothing more than a nylon, heavy gauge nylon fence. You can kind of see it. It's the black netting that you see in the back there. I think I have another picture of it later. And then finally, you get it set up. You're watering it. You're maintaining it. It's time to enjoy the efforts that you have put into it. Um, So that's a picture of our backyard. Which I think it was just last fall. We do a lot of flowers as well, not just the garden. The garden is the part you see with the lights around it. But the bottom pictures there are just some of the things that we pulled out last year. So we did little mini pumpkins. We do a lot of different flowers, dahlias and peonies, hydrangeas, black-eyed Susans, all kinds of different flowers. And then of course our peaches. We put in over the last couple of years 12 different fruit trees. We have peaches, nectarines, cherries, and I think three different kinds of apples. The apples are kind of hit or miss depend on how they go because they're still very young trees. But beyond just gardening for yourself, you know, garden for the wildlife. Yeah, we try to keep some of the wildlife out so they don't consume and mow everything down. But think of the other parts of wildlife, like our pollinators. I saw some pretty scary statistics, I think last month, about the decline in the native bee population in the U.S. Just from colony collapse or hive collapse. That it's kind of scary. So we're personally making an effort that whatever we put in our garden and in our flower beds, in our landscaping is all very much, uh, we try to do as much native stuff as possible to help our native pollinator populations as best we can, whether that's bees or dragonflies, the birds. We want to make sure that we give them everything that they have, of everything that we can do to provide a habitat for them to be able to grow and thrive. And through our efforts, we went to the National Wildlife Federation and we have become certified as a wildlife habitat with everything that we've been doing. And then, of course, do what I'm doing. Share your love of gardening. If you find joy in growing these fruits, whether it's just some dill or some chives, just some herbs here and there, or you're doing a full out garden, either share your knowledge or share what you're growing. Share it with a food bank, share it with your neighbor. It helps bring the community together, and it's a great thing to learn from, to share. And if you gather friends and family around a dinner table and you're sharing the food that you grew and cooked, it's just a wonderful thing. For me, it's a major stress relief. Working, sometimes not every day is your perfect day. And it's great to be able to go out after work and just decompress because you can't force nature. You have to be patient with it. You don't grow a tomato overnight. It takes months of work and patience. I got to meet Joe Gardner, who is a big name in the gardening world. There in the bottom right-hand side at the Philadelphia Flower Show 2 years ago. And then you can see other pictures there of just me working in the garden. It's very relaxing for me because it's just you and the plants and nature. And to kind of wrap things up, just take the opportunity to go outside and try something. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just get a 5 gallon bucket and a tomato plant and grow something. Give it a try, or go full in and build out a huge garden like I did, or even go even bigger. If you have the land, do row crops or something. But there's so many options from very simple to very complex with gardening. Just go out and try it. I'm doing this presentation on Earth Day, but really doing this makes Earth Day every day because your hands are in the dirt, and that's proven the microorganisms that are in the dirt and the grounding effect that you have helps you mentally and physiologically um, throughout your day. So it's great to do that every single day, whether it's just something small. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this short presentation. I could have gone off tangents on a whole bunch of different type of topics. Uh, there's my contact information, but the brainchild behind all of this is my wife, and she has a fantastic Instagram account. It's Longview underscore Gables. She does beautiful photography of everything that we've done. And I'm at Busy Dad's workshop. I'm kind of the behind the scenes of everything that's happening, plus some random things that I do with my myriad of hobbies. But you know, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to my wife through her Instagram account. I would love to share the information that we have learned. Um, Chan, it looks like you have a question. You'll have to unmute if you want to ask it, or you can type it if you want.
I have to agree to the recording.
True. And Russell brings up a good point, community gardens. Depending on where you live, different communities will have gardens. I know South Hanover Township, which is close to me, they have a community garden. Hershey has a massive community garden. And uh, check with your municipality to see what they have available. Because if you don't have room and you want to grow something larger, you can get different sized plots of land. Susanna, I will actually absolutely tell her thank you. I mean, she's been the brainchild behind all of this. I'm just the worker bee. I'm the farmhand. A lot of Chana, that you bring up a good question about shallow roots. Depending on what you're growing in, whether it's a pot or in the ground, um, a lot of vegetable plants aren't very deep. When we pull out our our, our plants in the fall, probably the deepest root that we have is a sunflower, and it's about 12 inches or so. Everything else is only just a few inches or right at the surface. I know with tomatoes, they tend to spread laterally. So when you pull it up out of the ground, it's more of a big patch, but it's only about, maybe 2 or 3 inches thick. So I think you would be, depending on how much space you have, you would be good with most plants. 4 inches, yeah, there's a lot you can grow in 4 inches, whether it's herbs or small veggies. I think you'd be quite all right. And then finally, to go back up to what Hannah mentioned about a tour, I am open if anybody would like to come over and check things out and I can discuss things more deeply. Uh, I am open to it anytime. Just reach out to me if you're local or if you're traveling in the area. Give me a call, send me an email, shoot me a message through Teams. I'm happy to share what we have because I think the best form to pay this forward is to share the knowledge and share what we have. Chen, good question about hydroponic. I have been trying to talk my wife into letting me try hydroponics in the basement here because I've got some unused space and she's not real keen on it right now. So I'm still working on her on that. But I have been looking into it. And there's some really cool hydroponic and aquaponic kits that you can get that are pretty compact. Some it's like a tower where the water system's at the bottom, it just pumps it up through and it's all open root in the tower. And as the water trickles down, it's fertilized water, high nutrient value. Yeah, I live in Dauphin County. I'm just outside of Hummelstown, very close to Hershey Park. I'm about 5 minutes away. Would I prefer open garden or greenhouse? Well, I want to have a greenhouse or at least a hoop house to be able to start stuff in earlier or to be able to grow later. In our area, greenhouses are basically a cooking facility in the summer. Unless you can get a lot of ventilation in or put shade cloth over it, it plants have a rough time right where we're at specifically for summertime growing. But in more extreme environments where it's colder longer or the growing season shorter, greenhouses are a great opportunity. I mean, we still want to build a greenhouse in our backyard, at least for seed starting and and later crops. And Costco every year, they're probably sold out by now, but they always have these little, I think it's like an 8x10 greenhouse that for like $1,000 that I've wanted to experiment with. Any other questions?
I just
If
have a
not, we'll
comment.
sure.
I think I like to plan things, and so I think I will take it upon myself to maybe run a couple of dates and times by you, Ken, and then invite the group to come on a tour. Is that
Absolutely.
is that
I'd be
cool?
happy with doing group tours. Yeah,
Okay.
2 years ago we had the Hershey Horticulture Society come over, and I did a whole presentation for about 30 people.
Okay, that's awesome. Super cool.
Russell, very good question. Have I saved money from the grocery store? When I decided to build this garden, I tracked every expense that we put into this. And over the last couple of years, I've spent a little bit more money than I wanted to on the whole thing, but I also real-time tracked every pound of food that we got out of this, as well as uh, the associated cost at the time from Giant, our local grocery store. And I remember very specifically our first year, we grew well over 600 pounds of food. We consumed it all throughout the year. And I think the return on investment took me 3 years. So now because we have more of a closed loop system now, and I'm not buying a lot of soil, and I'm not buying a lot of plants because we do a lot of seed starting. And if we buy plants, they're from a local place. We are definitely now in the black every year. We are certainly saving money. Any advice for a city gardener? There's a lot of cities that are doing community gardens now. Like I know Detroit has a whole big area with where they took down some homes that they've made community gardens. There's other cities that have rooftop gardens. New York City, they have a really famous one called I think it's Grange Garden or whatever, but it's on top of a roof, and um, they do like farm to table type stuff. So there's a lot of different resources out there. Definitely, get on Google and look for local community gardens, look for rooftop gardens. Um, if you have a small patio, like say if you're in an apartment, if you have a small patio that's in the back, look for plants that are shade friendly if you don't get a lot of sun exposure. So there's always options. Guadalupe, let me know. Come on over, take a look at the rainwater system. Holly, we have not gotten into canning yet. We've we're starting to get a few things. We've got some mason jars and stuff like that, but we have not gone deep into canning yet. Where the problem is right now is we're not growing enough to be able to save. We're growing now. We're subsistence farming right now, so we're growing as much as we can eat throughout the season. Now, if I'm allowed to expand our garden out even larger, then maybe we'll start getting into canning. Like, there's so many things that you can do with gardening, from, like I said, a tomato in a bucket to greenhouses and gardening and seed starting and propagation and canning and blah 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 blah. It just can go on and on and on. But you don't have to make it over complex. Any other questions, comments, complaints? If not, I want to say thank you again for joining me here today. I'm surprised it went as long as it did. You got a lot of great questions. I really appreciate it again, and I'm being very serious. Our doors are open if you ever want to come visit. If Hannah wants to put together some dates or whatever that we can do like a group thing, let's do it.
I just sent you a list of dates, and I'll get your approval first, Ken, and then I'll send it out to the group to see when people are free.
Sounds good.
Making this happen. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Ken.
No problem. This is something I really like doing.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great Earth Day and get out there and get your hands dirty.
Thank
So
you. Bye,
thank you very
everyone.
much.